time is the greatest filter, and we've outlasted a lot of the brands that have like come and gone. For us, it's always been like an uphill battle because we minted at like peak sort of euphoria in 2021. After that, it was quick decline into the bear market. We've never gone like all guns blazing. We didn't want to dilute things. We had this sort of vision of taking Chimpers into this multimedia world, content, games, experiences, like that's what we wanted to see come to fruition. The only way that we'd be able to do that is if we start to reach real people and not just NFT holders.
How do you create digital assets that actually feel legendary?
Not marketing to people, but allowing people to fall in love with the brand. Ultimately, it's just about building brands and characters and content and experiences that people fall in love with until eventually it becomes quite hard to ignore.
Hello, Insight. Super happy to have you. It's a co-founder of Chimpers. Man, Mike is yours. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. No, pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for putting this together. Excited to chat about Chimpers, and yeah, that was an awesome intro. Loved it.
Appreciate it. I have seen you on different shows, from spaces to live streams. You've been increasing the speed, increasing your presence everywhere. How do you feel about it? How many actually like shows you already did during the past few weeks?
Quite a few, to be fair. I think yeah, we always do like spaces. Like I occasionally jump on like group panels and so on. But yeah, I think recently it's just there's so much going on, and like you can't understate like the importance of like getting your face out there and showing people a bit behind the scenes of the personality of the brand and the people behind it. So yeah, been busy trying to get on as many as I can and just spreading the chimp word, really. So yeah, there's been several. I've got one later today. But yeah, for me, I'm quite like a reserved person. So I don't like sort of, going like, yeah, come on, Chimpers, like on spaces. And, I don't know, maybe because we're like British and like we're, quite reserved in that way. But, to sort of compete and to get that, sort of name out there beyond the sort of echo chamber, it's a must. So yeah, no, it's going to be really fun.
I think you should talk about it more louder. You don't need
Yeah.
to think about it twice, because I think that's why people love you. And when I see Chimpers, when I like think about it, I immediately feel some genuine vibes, some friendly conversations, friendly community, and just friendly IP. And I think that's why one of the main keys why people actually love you and appreciate you. And being a builder with such a mentality and mindset, for me, that's a big W. I really love that. And yeah, I think with such approach, you can go uh, whatever wherever you want. But yeah, I mean, I think you should talk about it louder and talk Chimpers, because you guys are actually cooking. um and like Chimpers stand out as one of the few NFT brands that actually became like stronger during the bear market, right? But before we gonna dive deeper into everything, I want to ask you to share, to tell us a little bit, walk us through the main milestones of Chimpers. When you started, you can do it briefly, and some core pillars of your own strategy to bring Chimpers to this level till today.
Yeah, definitely. I think for us, it's always been like an uphill battle because we minted at like the peak sort of euphoria in 2021, like leading into 2022. And after that, it was, a quick decline into the bear market. And inevitably, that meant that it was increasingly more difficult to get attention. And in general, sentiment was down. And, the space started to get, you know, into sort of different elements of like what makes a project valuable, and it's second collections, it's tokens, it's all of these sort of things that were taking a lot of the attention during that time. And for us, being an art centric, community driven, like story driven brand, some of those things that originally brought people to Chimpers was less attractive because of the times and the attention being elsewhere. So for us it was always a bit of an uphill battle because trying to capture that attention and the staying power, we was just trying to really get that core community strong. But I think early on what we had done like quite well was build the foundation. So when we launched Chimpers, we had prior to that for a year been building the Boring Ape Chronicles, this sort of artwork series around the bored apes, and completely separate. But we cultivated this community, and of course, like everybody who joined that series were either bored ape holders, but also Timpers, lovers of pixel art and his sort of art journey. So we was able to cultivate quite a strong, tight knit core, and that sort of extended into the Chimpers world when we went to mint in May 2022. And from there, we obviously had a core community, which was really helpful because most of the times when a project launches, there's no real connection like prior. There's no sort of building blocks to developing those like connections and fostering those connections. It's just a mint, and then you're left with everybody trying to either get out or perhaps there wasn't as genuine about wanting to be a part of the community. So for us, like we'd already built like quite a tight knit community at the center. But then after that, it was like, how do we, this like periphery of those guys, like how do we get those people to stick around? And for us, it was like doubling down on the storytelling, experiences. We wrote a 6-part chapter novel around the Chimpers Chronicles story. So like cementing like the world and what it means to be in the sort of Chimpverse and the characters and the heroes, the villains. All of the things that build emotional connection, as well as experiences. So having a community map, hosting meetups, an art foundation where we gave back to the community and artists. All sorts of fun things in the dojo, our staking hub with like daily battles, and just building on top of that lore with like gamification and all that good stuff. But of course, that was like very community centric. So in 2023, that's where we decided that like we've got this really strong community, we've got a good foundation. Like, how do we expand beyond the bubble and start to build more depth to this IP and brand, which Chimpers in like this formative phase had built like a really solid foundation. It's like, how do we take this so that more people can fall in love with it? So that's why we went to social media and started to create all of those channels and start to build content around the world with the mascot Chimpy, and embark on that sort of experiment around like building content for everyday people versus Web3 collectors. And that was a key sort of pillar for us to also add into the sort of world of Chimpers, because we was able to really extend that awareness, extend the sort of longevity to the sort of collection and community and brand, because no longer is it just like relying on the core community. There's people who are slowly entering this world, falling in love with Chimpy and their characters, and that obviously opened up a lot of doors for us to go down into licensing and products and events, and just that whole sort of Web2 realm really quite early on. So I think having both sides really helped us establish that sort of strong staying power, as you mentioned. Like, we've been around for a while now, so I think those sort of fundamental things were important to get right. But then it was just us as a team and the community. Like, we're a family. rooted team. So there's a sort of a different dynamic with how we operate and how we engage with the community. And for us, like we've never gone like all guns blazing to, like I said at the start, like we're quite sort of humble and reserved, and that's also meant that we haven't been as risk averse, meaning that we haven't, been pushed down into routes that have been self, damaging for the long term. Like we've been quite sort of slow and steady, like just building like over time, and it's just allowed us to build that sort of staying power. But yeah, I'd say some of those are some of like the like broad reasons.
Guys, do you feel this massive progress, I would say? Because man, I never heard anything, bad or controversial about Chimpers, to be honest. Throughout these years, like I was always, getting a positive feedback. There was a time when I was, thinking like I want to buy Chimpers. I just need to sell, my all the NFTs, and I waited for the market to bounce back, and then like some circumstances, and I was losing my track, and I still want to get Chimper, very badly. Hopefully one day I will get him. But I mean, like this journey and all the steps, it was like massive, and for me this is the good example of how humble you can be and how big you can build your ecosystem just with your community, because people trust you because you are humble, because you are you know what you do, because you are transparent with them, and they help you build. And then like it can take years, it can go through absolutely different cycles from green charts to red charts, but you still can survive and you can thrive actually. And this is why like I respect you so much because of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like on your first point about the sentiment around chimpers, I think it's an interesting one because obviously from the outside looking in, like chimpers has always had this like positive sort of reception, and the way people sort of think about chimpers is it's this sort of small, tight knit community. Everyone's really nice, and there's some great collectors. But like, of course, like within the community, and we've obviously dealt with like turbulent times, like you said. Like it's been 4 years now, and that's for the most part always been a grind upwards. Like there's been times where things were really quiet, and Chimpers went down to like a really low floor price, and that was like 2023, 2024 when we was at the peak of the bear, and a lot of people exiting NFTs and people sort of questioning the sort of value proposition of like the direction that we were heading in, which was building this sort of brand, like stepping outside into the real world, trying to start that journey of content. And whilst there was all of these different things going on in Web3, like a lot of people started to question like what is the sort of value in holding chimpers. And of course, like there's been disputes within the community. Like not everyone's always been perfectly happy, and we've not always done everything perfectly right too. So it's just the way that we deal with things is, I think, the way that we've been able to build respect within the community and like sort of turn the doubters into believers over time, because we've always sort of acted in the best interests of the community and been very transparent, as you said, and just being aware that we don't always have the right answers, and it's sometimes about working with the community to actually troubleshoot things and figure out like from all the different voices, listen to what everyone has to say, and from there sort of taking that into account when you're sort of building the next steps. But we've always had this direction in mind, and we've always stuck through thick and thin with the direction that we felt was the best way for Chimpers. And I think now, as we, time is the greatest filter, and we've outlasted a lot of the brands that have like come and gone and had their spotlight because of the hype and the attention that we didn't necessarily get. But we've outlasted that, and I think that's led to a lot of like deep respect within the community and perhaps outside of it as well. So
That's for sure.
yeah.
That's for sure. I mean, like probably the main takeaway here is you dealt with it, right? Your community and people didn't create like drama on the timeline, all over the timeline, right? You dealt with it inside the community, you came to conclusions, you were transparent enough with people so that like they stayed with you, they are coming back to the ecosystem. But this is like already a big victory. But outside the community, from outside the community, I feel like it's always in a positive sentiment. I mean, Chimpers, and people love them. People always think about joining. And what you just talked about when you just went down your collection, I mean, it happened to everyone because you said it was like a brutal bear market. So it happened basically to every collection. And obviously, not everyone, and I would say like a very small percentage of all the collections survived after that time. And um, I respect a lot all the founders and teams who managed to survive those times, surviving right now, or already striving because they built to the level, to the stage when they already have a good foundation to build further and strive further. But another question I have in mind, like some NFT projects expanded aggressively during the bull market, uh, diluted holders with like collections, many a second, third, fourth collection, tokens, and some extraction mechanics. So why was staying focused on the originals, as you are staying focused, so important to you?
Yeah, I think, well, for us it was even when we launched Chimpers, like this routes back to like us just as a team as well, like in general, like some of the sort of tendencies of us is we've always been very conservative in the way that we've operated. And I think for us, even when we launched Chimpers, we decided that we wanted to slash it in half from what was like typical in 10K collections. And that's why we went with 5,555, because we felt that that would be a number that we could put all of our efforts and attention and energy into sustaining like a really good ecosystem with that. Like 10,000, it just felt too big. And even as a second collection, it's really easy to get diverted and distracted. And, ultimately you're left sort of straddling between multiple different communities, even though it all like encompasses one large brand. And floor price is obviously the biggest thing. So for us, we just felt like we would decide that putting value into the main collection would be the best route for us to just to, as I said, like get to this point today. I think if we had launched collections, second collections, and as, attractive as they would have been, because, we would have had huge revenues and, mint sort of proceeds from those, whether that's a second collection, whether that's a token. And, that would have been amazing for us. Like, but I think in the long term, just from what we have seen played out with like other collections, you're oftentimes left picking up the pieces and trying to, do your best to just, keep things afloat in terms of managing both communities and making sure that value remains in that core collection. So we didn't want to dilute things. And of course, there's that sort of other part of the equation where adding another collection brings a lower barrier to entry. You're looking at the long-term picture where, people will be coming into the Web3 ecosystem, and, perhaps that's the best sort of onboarding ramp into a second collection. But, ultimately, we have always looked at like the present and like who is here today. And we just never thought that we'd be able to sustain such collection sizes when, there's only a small amount of people that are here at this point in time. So I think that's probably the biggest reason. But, the other part of Jimpers is, the sort of trade-off is that that has meant ultimately that we've operated in quite an echo chamber, like in terms of we've got a small collection size. We've never had those sort of hype moments where there's a second collection, a TGE, where there's a large amount of the space sort of all looking at you at that present time. So we've always like had pockets of attention, and it's meant that we've never had that sort of pulling power that other collections have had because of those hype moments. So that's sort of the trade-off that Chimpers have always been trying to play catch up, trying to grab attention, and even just educate people about Chimpers in itself, because the reality is that a lot of people don't know about Chimpers and even understand the ecosystem or even the brand building that's going down right now. So I think there's obviously pros and cons to like both sides, but yeah, that's just sort of how we decided to take it.
I think that makes sense, absolutely. And let's be real, in most of cases, launching the second collection or launching the token is like more of extraction, right? It feels like extraction, at least from outside, in most of the cases. And it's very rare when, it can be something good. And when you're not giving promises to community, they are not expecting it, right? So many projects giving like a promise that we're gonna do a TGE, right? They are including it into their roadmap or just teasing people, and then obviously everyone will have questions about it over time, and if it will not happen, they will be disappointed. So I think having this mindset and having this strategy from the very beginning, from early days, and concentrating, focusing on one direction, one thing, is very good, and it's gonna worse way more than you're gonna dilute, right? Create lots of different stuff, and then like you will not be able to keep up with everything, and probably only few collections. For your last point about that many people don't know Chimpers. I've been to the space yesterday with Kleinosaurus, and I noticed that some people, like even on the stage, didn't know anything about them. Right? When it comes to pudgy penguins, let's say everybody know them. If you are in NFTs, if you are in this bubble, you know about pudgy penguins. But not everyone know about Kleinosaurus. As you said, not everyone know about Chimpers, and in my opinion, this is a very good way to onboard people. You have a very, unclosed potential that you can discover. You can bring even more people to your ecosystem thanks to your actions and efforts. And, it will be even bigger. It will be even huge. I mean, bigger than you are right now. But, for now, what I see on my timeline, I have some good friends I have been following for a long time. They are constantly posting about Chimpers representing your brand with their personal brands, right? And this is very, very good. Good to see all over the timeline for years now.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's good. I think from what we've been able to do over the past few years, one of the biggest things that we decided to do was, after launching Chimpers, like we didn't have a second collection. So it was like, how do we build onboarding like touch points through a collectible format? So like even the Chimpers card app that we launched like early 2024, this sort of drop platform for trading cards and ripping open packs, and us being able to sort of expand to different chains like Abstract, Ape Chain, Base, and through collectibles being able to increase our sort of on-chain footprint and bring in more sort of familiarity with Chimpers through these collectibles, which a low barrier to entry and allows us to make cool experiences and allow people to feel those and to slowly start to fall in love with Chimpers through that way. So even to today, like whether it's the collectible cards, whether it's through social media content, people who enjoy the IP and brand building, through the plushies, blind boxes, whatever it may be. Like people in the Discord, people on X are always sort of like working towards Chimpers and trying to get their sort of membership via the NFT. But in any case, like we've always like made sure that people who are outside of the community don't necessarily have the core NFT feel involved and feel a part of that sort of world, whether it's in Discord or elsewhere. They feel right at home. So I think having that sort of warm environment as well is always great. And it sort of probably get onto it later, but like our collector hub, which we're potentially launching next week, is for everybody, and it like is all encompassing of all the assets in our ecosystem, all the way from the core NFT to everything outside of that. So another sort of way for people to feel that affinity to Chimpers, and just sort of slowly, gradually get more and more involved in the world. So we've always, kept that door open for everybody. And I think, whether or not people hold the NFT or not, it's always nice to see people on the timeline, especially more so than ever, getting more and more excited about Chimpers.
Absolutely love it, man. Thank you so much for being so honest on our episode today. Really, really appreciate it. Um, and yeah, you just mentioned toys, and I have a few questions regarding expansion from our bubble. And let's start with like social medias, because Chimpers now reach millions of views on TikTok, Instagram. You have pretty good stats, lots of followings, right? And you're focusing on this like short form content. I know some other brands as well, and they are also showing a very good results. Uh, so, like, I'm kind of curious. Do you think the future of NFT brands is less about marketplaces and more about owning attention at internet scale?
Yeah, I think the IP and like brand building like isn't the be and end all of the successful NFT brand. I think bucketing, it's bucketing sort of success as, the brands that sort of expanding beyond Web3 like isn't necessarily a fair thing, because there's a lot of projects that are doing great things and innovating and being experimental without sort of trying to onboard the masses. But I think for us, as a brand that launched, we had this sort of vision of taking Chimpers into this multimedia world, which meant content, games, experiences. Like that's what we wanted to see come to fruition. So the only way that we'd be able to do that is if we start to reach real people and not just NFT holders. So that's where the sort of direction came from. Let's set up social media channels. And this was in early 2023. So, around January, February time, several months after we'd launched Chimpers. And there wasn't many brands doing it at that point. Pudgy Penguins were. They was putting out their positive affirmation content, and sort of experimenting with short form content as well. So it was quite alien in that respect. Like not a lot of brands were experimenting with content, but we thought that having a mascot, which was Chimpy, which we created as our sort of front facing figure, would allow us to you know, capture more attention, allow people to fall in love with the brand without necessarily having to, be weighed down by this vast world of, you know, characters and world and, just the real depth of the Chimpverse. We was thinking about how do we meet the audience where they're at, and on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, what people are looking for is sort of bite-sized, quick action that makes them feel something, that makes them feel, a certain way. Um, they're not necessarily looking for like the real story sort of depths to start with. So that's what we did, and just experimented with content and quickly started to gain traction through sort of different video formats. And things just quickly evolved from there. We started to think about how do we work in the sort of licensing entertainment space. We signed with a licensing agency, and worked with them for 2 years, and they helped us sort of take Chimpers from the digital realm into the sort of physical realm. So we was at trade shows like the Vegas Licensing Expo and Comic Con and New York Toy Fair, and starting to just build that brand equity and putting our sort of brand into the sort of niche of the entertainment space. And you know that in itself helped to open up more doors, as well as the content channels growing. And it led to, brand collaborations, just, a greater fandom, a greater sort of community. And I think ultimately that is just sort of snowballed along the way. As the content has grown, it's opened up more opportunities to collaborate with others. But I put a post out a few days ago about like the sort of behind the scenes of that. People sort of equate the sort of brand building to just content, but it's about networking, being at these trade shows, like really connecting with other brands and companies, putting yourself out there and pitching to them, and even just being relentless on LinkedIn and networking with the sort of industry on there. There's a plethora of people that have built brands over decades and are in the sort of manufacturing and distribution space, other agencies, all of that sort of compounds to building more respect and also just awareness. So I think us being on that journey has just been like really important to building longevity for Chimpers. And all of these sort of social media milestones on the follower account are great, but I think more important than that is just the depth that is being built. And there's been some like tremendous like collaborations that we've just done through a step-by-step process. Of course, when we first started Chimpers social channels, like nobody wanted to work with us because there wasn't really the appetite to, like, it was a new brand, like new content. So for brands to want to work with us, there wasn't really that sort of entry. But as we sort of started to build that virality and Chimpers started to proliferate in all sorts of spaces, on public. Yeah, like exactly. Like it's just fairly simple, but it didn't go without real hard work and grit and just persistence really. And yeah, just getting the opportunity to work with brands like Kung Fu Tea Boba, like one of the biggest boba chains in the US, to Jogaman from Line Friends, and then most recently Fugglers as well, which is one of the biggest plush toy brands in the world. You know, we wouldn't have imagined that those doors would have even been possible when we first set up our Instagram page in early 2023. There was just no chance. We obviously thought, that's where we want to be. Like, that's the great vision. We want to be able to be side by side with these brands that are really, proliferating across pop culture and, this lifestyle character brand space. That's where we want to be. And now we've sort of step by step sort of cementing Chimpers into that space where brands are now sort of seeing Chimpers as synonymous with the others. And Fugglers was a huge one to sort of build that sort of cultural depth. And I'm sure we'll speak more about that later, but yeah, I think expanding for us onto these content channels was huge.
I think that's more than necessary right now. If brands started to do it earlier, as you did, right, as other brands also, uh, it already, bears some fruits right now on this market in the current state of everything. But right now, it became like absolutely necessary to expand, to distribute more of your content, and especially if you're building IP, that's like must have, in my opinion. And you've done a great job with that. But as you said, like you after social medias, you expanded to licensing opportunities, to plushes, to like absolutely different collaborations, viral content, game nights, activations. And for me, this is even more important because you didn't just stand still. You decided to expand even from already good results out there. And I'm kind of curious about plushes. Where can we buy them right now? And where we can do that if we can. And also, what's the future? Do you have any, productions, releases coming for physical collectibles? Because now this is like a
Yeah,
mainstream.
definitely. No, it's in a way, the physical side of Chimpers has always been, again, like quite conservative. We've always like done things small and not too many, and it's always left people wanting more. And some people sort of asking like, why aren't you doing more physicals? But for us, like same with content, like we didn't put anything out for almost like 2 years because what was more important to us was building fandom, building that sort of depth, and knowing that people was sort of falling in love with the brand before actually putting something out there. So that there's that validation that people wanted more, was the main thing for us. So content was like the biggest thing for us to really double down on. And just a brief timeline. In 2024, we did our first plushie with U2s, which is, a big sort of like character brand, like pop culture plushie manufacturer that works with sort of mainstream brands to release plushie pre-orders. And they reached out to us in early 2024 after they started to see some of our content, and we did a plushie for Sensei Master Chimpo. It felt right starting there because he's like the leader of the dojo and sort of this sort of relic item, like real collectible piece. And from there, we didn't do anything up until 2025, which was our Series 1 blind box costume party plush keychain set. And that was with our partner 223, who we signed on as a licensee, who we met at the Vegas Licensing Expo, who work in the sort of manufacturing realm. And, they helped us bring that to life, and we sold 3,000 blind boxes in several hours on that first day, across both Web3 and Web2 platforms. And that was the sort of first real proof of success at like a large drop scale. And, we've seen those blind boxes proliferate into all kinds of spaces, from like the social media fans to people here in Web3, but also even in sort of gift and novelty shops. So like where lifestyle character brands are really discovered, like Japan LA and Bunny's Cafe, two real sort of prime real estate spots for character brands and plushies. They was sort of found there, as well as like lots of cool content creators in the sort of character brand space. So that was like the first real drop and launch. And then in November, we did a collaboration with Fugglers, and they're obviously one of the biggest plush brands in the world right now. They have huge social traction. They're global in almost every retailer imaginable, and have such a real pulse on like the social media world right now. And in November, we did a collaboration with them, a 3-part content series that went viral. But there was also a plush giveaway. They made 2 Chimpy Fugglers, and one was given away to the Web3 community, one was given away to one of our followers on Instagram. And we built content around these 2 plush Fugglers, and it went viral as well. People were absolutely desperate to see Chimpy Fuggler like brought to life on like a grander scale. People were desperate to get more of it. And even most recently in April, we did a post on our shop page of the Chimpy Fuggler, and it got over 100,000 likes, just sort of traversing into the sort of Fuggler fandom realm, but also like plushies and that whole space, like it was on Pinterest, it was on Reddit forums, went viral on Instagram and TikTok. And for us, that was like another huge validation moment. Again, like we're not rushing into things, like we're building these sort of moments to drive more awareness and drive more sort of fandom and people craving more physicals. So we've just been gradually building that sort of connection with the fans. And yeah, that Fugler moment was a real sort of validation point where, people really do want more. And it's led to even more people from the Fuglers world coming into the Chimpers world and actually asking us, like, where can we get more? Like, they want more plushies. So that leads us to today, and we're launching our online shop in the next few weeks with a small capsule collection. Not plushies to start with, but it's a small capsule collection of mystery t-shirt blind boxes, like keychains, sticker packs, mugs, like some nice, some fun sort of accessories. But ultimately, this online shop is going to be like our evergreen shop where we can now start to like push out more physical products, like see what fans want to have, and even like in the Web3 realm, what people want to see more of. So we've built this foundation now where people do want more, so we're able to give more. But we're also working on a plush in the sampling process right now, which will be like a hero plushie, a bit like the Domo one behind me. Something that people can have in their hands, like a core sort of chimpy collectible piece, because we've not really done one before. So that will be a huge sort of launch as well. And we're working on another blind box series also. But one of the big things that we've been working on over the past few years, obviously we've been building this huge content distribution audience. We've been building like stronger affinity to the brand through physical collectibles. And we've been, heavily active in the licensing and entertainment space, building, greater sort of brand equity. So one of the things that we'll be announcing soon is this sort of agreement and partnership with a new licensing agency, which will sort of be coming on board as a master licensing agent, meaning they'll be responsible for Chimpers on a global level across all territories, not just the US, but in Asia and beyond. And they have the sort of infrastructure, the manufacturing, distribution to really build the Chimpers brand with us on a long-term basis. And obviously that means more physicals, it means more pop-up events, and really building the brand in the way that we want to do it and know how best to, which is through a real grassroots way, and building it in a real strategic, methodical approach, which, as we've always done, and as I gave examples to, is starting small, building from the ground up, not marketing to people, but allowing people to fall in love with the brand. So that's obviously going to be a huge sort of stepping stone for us, like on the brand side. So yeah, to answer the question, like physicals, all of that stuff, like there's a lot more coming. And even on the collectible side of things, Chimpers cards, like that's been like a core part of us being able to, as I mentioned, proliferate across like the Web3 into different chains, but also like collectible cards have been like something that people in our community have loved, and there's more to come on like the collectible front as well, on the card side. So yeah, like there's a lot of things in motion on the physical side. And I think for us, like the philosophy has always been like physicals allow you to really connect with the brand. And I think especially for like the social media followers, like that's their sort of next stepping stone into becoming a real true loyal fan. From that journey of just being a content viewer, people have been watching us for 3 years now, and they've really grown to love Chimpy. They've grown to love the world and watch us and watch out for the reels that get posted every single week. So, we've even seen fans on social media buying on secondary eBay platforms the Chimpy plush keychains at a premium, and they're not even Web3 collectors. So for them to step into that next phase of collecting and bringing the brand into their life and being able to take it wherever they go and bring more people into knowing about Chimpers is going to be like a great next step as well. So yeah, a lot to come on that side.
Man, you nailed it with this breakdown. It was so detailed. I I got like many points to add here to emphasize. But the first scene I want to ask you, can you show us any Chimpers collectibles, behind you? Maybe you have some behind
Oh
you.
yeah, I do. Yeah, so can you see this actually? Like
Yeah,
they're the
it's
two.
like behind your mic. Can you bring them closer?
Yeah, sure.
I already see these cuties. I saw it on the timeline.
Yeah, so
But
like this was like the Chimpy plus keychain blind box series. So these are just like the first concepts of our blind box sort of journey, really. And there was obviously Dragon Chimpy, there was Sunny Chimpy, Meow Chimpy, and Magic Chimpy, and there was a secret. So that was the Chimpy without any clothing, like resembles the mascot that you see on social media, but had a frog patch like Sensei Master Chimpo over there. So that was like the U2's plushie that we did in 2024 as a pre-order. But yeah, this was like I don't have the box as well, but the box was like awesome. And you can actually tap Chimpy on your phone. It has an NFC chip in the belly, and the cool thing about that is it has allowed us to like traverse into the physical digital realm where people who collect these will actually be recognized going forwards as like an early collector, because not only on your phone will you be able to enter like a website portal where you can claim a proof of authenticity collectible that sort of shows that you own this collectible, but also there's things that we can give them like free wallpapers. Like only people who have access to that NFC chip can get exclusives because they own this plushie. But going further than that, in our collector hub, where we have really built out this holistic view of our ecosystem, whether that's artworks from Timpers, the Chimpers NFTs, storytelling artworks, or even physical collectibles, because they're on chain, we can actually recognize that in our collector hub. So if you own a Chimpy Plus keychain, you're actually going to get a Chimpin, which is our version of badges. And on your collector profile, you'll actually be able to see that you own one of those Chimpy Plus keychains. So again, like we're able to recognize, and people who have collected things, they get that sort of ability to flex that, but also we're able to reward that as well because it's on chain and people can see that. So that was a really cool part of this plush keychain series, was that it wasn't just about the physical plushies, it was the digital side. And not to mention as well as that sort of proof of authenticity, we actually had a bunch of rewards. So you could actually tap your Chimpy keychain, redeem a Chimpers digital collectible card pack on our card app, rip it open, and there was like 30 cards of all different kinds of Chimpers costume party cards. So there's another sort of element of collectability. You get the plush keychain, you get to rip open a trading card pack, and within that trading card pack there was also rewards. So Telegram sticker packs, sort of ApeCoin, an arcade machine. So it was this sort of multifaceted collectible experience, which, did sort of test the barriers of, complexity. Not everybody probably even wants to, like people from social media, that they don't really, they're not as bothered about going into this digital experience and chasing rewards and gamification. Like for them, it's as simple as they just love Chimpy and they want this plush keychain to show their sort of admiration and love for the brand. But it is a really cool concept and use case of showing like what's possible with like Web3 tech, and allowing us to really reward like collectability.
And I mean, you see the constant smile on my face. That's because I felt in love with Chimpers even more now. I really want to get that toy, so please, when you get a new release, reserve one for me. But yeah, jokes aside, I'm looking forward to your online shop. First of all, to all like small things, and then I hope in the next like 2 3 months we will see some new collectibles there, and people, me, other people, holders will be able to get some. This is super exciting. I When I just came to this space, I thought like, oh my god, people are buying NFTs, these like digital collectibles, digital assets for $100. I thought like, are they crazy, right? But right now, I'm like excited for every quality physical collectible from my favorite NFT brands for my favorite IPs, and I changed my mindset completely. So I think like with your plushes, with what you have inside them in terms of like digital side of things, I think sooner or later, when we reach the another sentiment, or just more like a friendly sentiment for the free side of things, like people will start recognizing it, and it's gonna be even more useful, and people will actually use it. I mean, normies,
Yeah,
when it comes
I
to
mean
plus.
that's another like fundamental like issue with like Web3 brands sort of like proliferating into the real space, is that there's this sort of stigma. There's, people who detest crypto, and any association with it automatically becomes a turn off because,
Yeah.
in their sort of like psyche, like for them, anything that even touches that concept is something that you have to stay away from. So, all of the brands that are sort of pushing into that space and, you know, lead in with the characters, the content first, and then sort of like funneling in these other elements of Web3, like these plush keychains, for instance. The majority of people who follow us on socials have no idea that Chimpers is an NFT brand. They have no idea that we have this sort of vast digital collectible ecosystem. But, it's all about like how do you carefully and delicately introduce them to these things, and strategically, like this is one way of doing that. Like I said, not everybody's going to do it, but for them, they don't actually know that NFTs are involved. Like it's all under the hood. Like they set up an email, they get this proof of authenticity, they can then redeem card packs, which are all NFTs, but they don't know that that is the underlying sort of tech. For them, it's just like this front end experience that feels fun and exciting and collectible. So there's not a lot of difference between collectibles in general and NFTs, and even like just things that are off-chain digital collectibles. It's just the sentiment and like the psyche and that sort of connection to Web3 and crypto that is what turns people off. So it's just about finding ways to introduce it to them without you know, sort of, yeah, bringing up like complication and, really sort of overwhelming them with too much. So I think, yeah, like it's something that everyone straddles with, pudgy penguins, like Claynosaurs, Azuki, even like, with Pudgy World and the trading card game with Azuki, like both of those things went completely out of the Web3 bubble, and it reached people outside of this space. And you see the sort of pushback that, real people give on, these sorts of launches. And it's just sort of like a small example of like what, Web3 brands have to sort of tackle. And, ultimately it's just about building brands and characters and content and experiences that people fall in love with, until eventually it becomes quite hard to ignore, and people will start to accept that Web3 and NFTs are just you know another layer of being able to enjoy the brand, and it's not for everybody, but a lot of people will start to see the sort of use cases and the importance of it as well. So yeah.
Yeah, man. You nailed it once again. And I mean, I'm always thinking in terms of pudges, right? About all the products, trying to go deep, research everything. And yeah, I mean, we are evolving. I'm always saying, basically on every of my podcast, I'm saying that we are evolving in the right direction, and sooner or later we will reach that level. And thanks to you guys, to everybody who tried to build it, to try to build this, systems and strategically to onboard people, right? To not like to make it less complicated for them, and at the same time not like pushing them to come, right? But giving them value so they can feel it. And another point I really love from like our conversation today is that I realized that you never tried to rush, for something. And that's it relates with me a lot because I'm always telling to creators that guys don't rush. If you have some ideas, don't try to, coach this hype. Try to keep them, try to work on them to bring the best possible version of it, and try to, if you want to do something that like you have only one chance to do, right? And you need to reach the outcome, you need to reach the certain result, better prepare for it before you do that. And I think that's what most of the brands are missing. They are trying to rush, they are trying to launch, they are trying to coach the hype, they are enjoying it until the moment when everything starts quieting. So I think by your example, many other founders, builders, just community members can learn a lot from your story. And I still want to touch on some points, so let's extend it for a little bit. And yeah, like, I mean, from everything what we discussed today, right? You shared your vision, you shared the story, like the key milestones, and like Chimpers has this recurring point of alignment, right? And I'm curious, like, what does true alignment between team, collectors, community, ecosystem actually look like in practice? You can share it briefly, just from what you already experienced and how you reached this kind of alignment.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been a huge piece of the jigsaw that we've been focused like quite relentlessly on solving. Um, because it's all well and good for Chimpers to be growing as this brand and to be reaching the outside world and gaining all of this popularity. But ultimately, like, what does it do for holders? Like, one part of it is I think every team, in their own way, should be striving to push Web3 IP forwards and bring in positive sentiment to the space at large. And I think Chimpers doing what we have done has helped achieve that in some shape or form. And I think that positive sentiment, obviously, and the growth of Chimpers on social media helps to attract more people. Like, I think, people want to be involved in brands that are doing, this sort of brand building. They feel part of something big, they feel a part of something special, and I think obviously that has attracted a lot of people to Chimpers over the past few years. But again, like, there's a disconnect because ultimately the holders don't benefit until a long, you know, further down the road. So for us, it was like, how do we solve for that? And it's just small steps of like showing intent. And one of the ways that we did that was introducing kawaii chimpers. So you'll notice that originally Chimpers was born out of pixel art from Timpers. Like, obviously he's this pixel artist, but he's an illustrator too. And pixel art it felt strongly to him because he worked on Nouns prior to Chimpers, which was that sort of, iconic collection and auction every day with the Noggles. Like, he was one of the artists on there. And in general, like, he came into the space creating pixels, so it felt right for Chimpers to be pixels. But there was a disconnect there, like Chimpers started to grow on social media with this kawaii illustrated style. And here in Web3, the NFTs remained pixel. So they didn't feel as strongly connected to that brand growth. So again, an example of solving that alignment piece was recreating the collection in this illustrated art style across all 5,555, so that holders can now feel a part of that brand journey. They feel more connected to the world. And what it does is allows us to bring Chimpers NFTs into Giphy, bring them into social media posts, and allow us to think about the long term, like how do we bring them into products and experiences. So I think that was really important for us to do. It was like a bold move, but with the way that the direction of the brand has been heading over the past 3 years, pixels have not become obsolete, but the brand and like the large sort of like growth has come from this social media brand style, and that it's superseded all of the branding that we do. So Kawaii Chimpers being the front facing NFTs felt like the right sort of thing to build cohesion and again to like build that connection to the holders. So that was one part of the alignment puzzle. The other part of the puzzle was NFT contract. So for us with Chimpers, we'd been a collection that was born out of, the bull run. We've had huge volumes on the collection, significantly less than others, but still a substantial amount. And so much has been left on the table because of obviously the marketplace is moving away from royalties. And that's just the natural thing that everybody has had to deal with, building other revenue streams, drops, experiences, etc. But for us, we felt like migrating to a royalty enforcing contract would be the right thing for us to do to build alignment with the community again, because what we would do with those royalties is reinvest it back into the ecosystem. So in January, we migrated to a new contract, and today we've had over 3,600 of the NFTs migrate in just the first few months. So, a majority of the collection has already migrated. And what that has allowed us to do, and I put out a tweet about it today, again, like it was a bold move, but I think it was an important one for us to do, because although there's less volume now, although we're not visible on Blur, moving to a royalty enforcing contract has allowed us to do a few things, which I said is reinvest back into the ecosystem with, the proceeds that we get from those royalties. But it's allowed us to protect the collector community within Chimpers a lot more, because, we're not being farmed now. It's all organic buys, people who genuinely want to collect the Chimpers NFTs and not just trade and flip them. And, we've seen real good signs, like people collecting rares, grails are coming back into the equation. So it's helped us build like a more healthy ecosystem. The trade-off is that we don't have as much volume, we don't have as much visibility because we're not on Blur currently. But again, like it was an alignment puzzle piece for us to solve, because immediately allows us to, start putting small amounts back into the ecosystem. And we've built a dojo treasury with over 140 NFTs, over 60 million Chimpster, our adopted ecosystem token. And this treasury is going to be used in our collector hub for reward seasons, quarterly reward seasons, where just for holding a chimp, you'll be able to enter these. And that probably wouldn't have been possible if we didn't, move to a royalty enforcing contract. Like it helps, So we started to see that sentiment shift. Quirky's moved, a few other collections moved, and, it feels like royalties are generally more accepted when the community understand and know that they're being used for good reason. I think like in the 2022 period onwards, like people were sort of just sitting on them, and it felt like it was detracting from, the community felt like it was detracting from, the big vision, and there wasn't being reinvested wisely. So for us, like, being able to do that in a sustainable way was really important in doing. And the third piece of this alignment sort of puzzle was, adopting our ecosystem token, which is a strategy token from the TokenWorks ecosystem, which is Chimpster. And that was back in October. So again, like on the premise of like everything that we discussed, like we didn't want to launch our own token. Like we felt like it would be distractive. We felt like it would be destructive, for the reasons that, you know, people in the community would, you know, get this token, like there'd be this big value generating event, but everybody and us would be left picking up the pieces because ultimately there's no connection to the NFTs. It's a separate product, it's a separate entity. And we didn't want to just launch a meme coin. Like we wanted to have something that felt connected to the ecosystem. So when strategy tokens launched, we felt right away that it would be a really interesting use case for us to adopt. So when Chimpster was launched, you know, we adopted that, and we demonstrated that it would be used in our ecosystem. We market bought it, you know, from zero with the community from the ground up, and have now started to like weave it into parts of the ecosystem. And the great part of strategy tokens is that they're not just a regular token, they're connected to the NFTs. So when there's volume on this token, it accrues a pool. And when that pool sort of amounts to 100%, it buys an NFT from the floor automatically, and then relists it. And when it gets relisted, it's higher than the sort of floor price. And when anybody buys that listed NFT, it actually burns Chimpster in the process. So it's this sort of like value circle. You know, when people buy Chimpster, it supports the NFTs. And it felt like it solved a real big problem with tokens that have been around for quite some time. So that in itself was important for us to adopt because 1% of those trading fees actually go back to us, the dojo treasury. So it was another sort of touch point for us to, you know, reinvest back into our treasury. So from royalties and now Chimpster fees, we're able to, you know, really reinvest back into the Chimpers ecosystem by buying the NFTs, buying the Chimpster token. And again, like having a way for us to reward the community with this dojo treasury. So I think for us, alignment is, you know, connecting the holders to the brand growth. It's, you know, when we're growing as well, it's sort of reinvesting back into the ecosystem. And those two fundamental things, I think, have built a lot of confidence and a lot of sort of respect in the Chimpers brand because they feel like, you know, it's not this sort of disconnected, disjointed ecosystem. It's one that feels really interconnected and one where, you know, they can contribute to it and help bring value to it at the same time because, you know, buying Chimpster, collecting the NFTs all serve to, you know, build greater opportunity for us to reinvest back. So yeah, I think that is probably one of the big pieces that we've, you know, solved and have been really heads down on, you know, really, like I said, like working restlessly to make sure that the ecosystem feels unified and that the community feel strongly connected to it, because I think that's probably been one of the biggest pitfalls of NFT communities at large for the past few years is as these ecosystems have grown more expansive, as communities have like grown larger, you know, people start to feel like, how does this connect to the brand? Like, how does my NFT holding, you know, give me confidence for the sort of future? So, you know, it's just the small moves of like intent that are really important to show that the team cares about these assets, which is, you know, the collector hub that we're building, but also cares about like making a sustainable, healthy ecosystem by reinvesting back as well. And yeah, those parts have been, you know, really important for us to solve.
Brother, inside, I don't know how, but you predicted my two next questions and you already answered them about
Okay.
reinvesting and about token. Man,
Yeah.
that's crazy. But I loved it. Thank you so much appreciate like such a detailed information. I think, it definitely gives people more understanding inside, outside the ecosystem, what it is, how it works. And I want to highlight the point and the moment about reinvestment into the community. Like, you are doing it pretty well. Besides that, coming back to my previous point, you are not rushing to do it, and people feel like you are doing something, they can actually get some rewards, treasury grows, activations. They understand that they can get something right now, and they understand that there will be many more things ahead, right? Because they see this potential, they see what you are doing, and this is like super super cool. I think not everybody, only few ecosystems are actually like reinvesting. Other ecosystems just, I don't know what they are doing. Maybe extracting, maybe just thinking, overthinking the process. But yeah, once again, how you are doing it and your alignment. This like was my original question. Your alignment with community is on the next level, in my opinion. So yeah, from now on, it's the main mission is just to increase everything, increase your potential, and bring more people to Chimpers. And I hope with all your content and different socials in our bubble as well, you will be able to make it, and our podcast will help you as well. But yeah, I mean, recently you did this reveal of 99's Genesis Chimper. Like, it felt
Yeah.
like a major lore event, actually.
Yeah.
For me, and I assume for other people as well. The community reactions, like, it was awesome. That
Yeah.
day I saw Chimpers all over my timeline. But how do you create, like, I have a question, actually a very good one. How do you create a digital assets that actually feel legendary? How it's possible to do it right now?
I think the NFTs and like it's like you said, like it's a major lore events, and I think major lore events are built on like not just like a moment in time. It's like a substantial amount of like smaller things that happen before then until it gets to like this tipping point where like we had with Adam and that sort of Genesis Chimpers reveal, this sort of huge lore event. And in terms of like how Chimpers assets are special, like the Genesis Chimpers, like they were the one of ones, the 100 one of ones, which came prior to Chimpers launching. So already like they the sort of elite assets of our ecosystem. They are the heroes, the villains, they all have backstories. They were created and intended to be the sort of anchor of the Chimpverse. Different heroes, different villains. There's only 100 of them, and they're all one of ones handcrafted by Timpers. And because they came prior to Chimpers and there's only 100 of them, like of course like they're rare, like they're highly sought after. But I think it was the way that you could get them which added to that overall sort of feeling of exclusivity. You had to have this diamond fleece, which you had to burn in this experience for it to reveal the Genesis chimp. And because we went on that journey prior to Chimpers with this artwork series called the Boring Ape Chronicles, there's these 6 artwork episodes of the Bored Apes entering the sort of storytelling series. And when that 6-chapter story closed, holders of that sort of artwork NFT, the full set, were airdropped this diamond fleece. The series was called The Quest for the Diamond Fleece. So it was like connected to the story and the lore. And it's this jacket, and people that had it were able to later learn that they could burn it for a Genesis Chimpers. So it allowed us to like step from the Bored Ape world into this whole new, brand new IP, which was Chimpers. And I think that experience, like early on, really built this tangible, deep-rooted feeling of excitement before Chimpers launched. And over 98 of those were burned in the years between 2022 to 2026, and only 2 were left remaining until Adam purchased it. very recently. And I think he came to us with the idea of, let's do a stream, let's make this huge event. Because back in the day, these diamond fleece burns were like so exciting. They were, huge. Like everybody loves a mint experience. And the fact that you can mint a one of one Genesis was crazy. So even more so now in 2026. And I think the reason why it was such a big lore event was there's been so much journey and like so much substantial like brand building, storytelling that has been built in between, that has meant that when we was able to do this live stream event, it just meant so much more. Like there's real depth to the Chimpers world. And everybody has been on this like up and down journey, like all these different experiences, but we can all sort of like resonate in this mint experience, which is very simple. You burn the fleece, but it feels special because of, the nature of how they was born, the Genesis Chimpers, but also the nature of the journey that we've been on up until this point. And I think Adam, like, it was just like the cherry on the cake, like no better person than Adam to, take that responsibility and opportunity to burn this diamond fleece for the 99th Genesis, leaving just one more remaining. It was just crazy. And, him being like this, he's the face of NFTs, like, let's face it, like he has helped revive and like bring this like resurgence in NFTs at large over the past few years. So for him to do that, like, it was really special. And for us to do it live on a stream with, 4,000 people eventually at the end of the stream, it was crazy, and have that like opportunity to, not just for the Chimpers community, but for so many people that came into that stream to learn more and just feel the excitement and like the buzz of like this whole like storytelling journey, like from day one till now, like we're doing today. It was just like a really cool experience. So, yeah, long-winded answer, but I think that there's a lot of factors that go into like what makes an NFT like a grail, like what makes it special. And I think it's like the experiences and these moments that make things, even more valuable.
Man, it was an amazing event for sure. Like, I mean, we need more vibes like this. We definitely
Yeah.
need more vibes. And I'm happy that like opportunities are coming to you, right? Like Adam, he came to you with an idea to make it happen, and this is super super cool. And I think because of you have trust, you have reputation, you have credibility around not only like people who, right, like buying collectors, but also some builders, uh, different other. Oh my god, uh, different other ecosystems as well. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool. I hope we will see more of this from you guys, from other ecosystems too. And thank you so much for sharing details about it. I'm sure it's going to be interesting for the people. And I feel like there is like many more corners of Chimper's lore we can discover. So let's bring it on. Let's let people to know more about it. But yeah, thank you so much. And as we are coming to an end, I would like to ask you a few more questions. It will be just like more like a tips for people, to discover, to explore Chimper's ecosystem and your future prediction, your future, you know, like mindset. What do you see in the future? How do you feel about it? So let's go one by one. The first thing I would like to hear from you is how people outside of the ecosystem can um, can be involved right now, where they can find all the information, all the main information, and how they can contribute.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that we launched recently was a new website called world.chimpers.com. And essentially what it is this sort of basically everything that we've spoken about today. Like, it's digests everything into this website, from our story, the characters, the evolution of the characters, the Diamond Fleece lore, the different novels that we've wrote, to playing around with different experiences like games, like fun sort of experiences as well, and all sorts of stuff really. From the collection to the rarity to like gallery, all sorts of fun stuff. And if you're looking to learn more about Chimpers, like that's the place to sort of fall down the rabbit hole, because you get to enjoy everything that we've just spoken about. But like I said earlier, like there's so many different ways to participate and engage in the brand. Of course, like the Chimpers NFTs are the ultimate membership of the Chimpers world. There's the Genesis one of ones, the elite sort of collection collectibles. But there's also Chimpster, a really low barrier way for anybody like on the sort of fungible side to collect the token. You can very much be involved in the journey of the Chimpers brand by just holding Chimpster. And the great thing about it is in the collector hub that we'll be launching very soon, you get rewarded for holding parts of the ecosystem, whether it's the NFTs, whether it's art, whether it's Chimpster, you'll get badges. Yeah, it's you get badges, you'll get even entry into rewards raffles. So it's holding even like small parts of the ecosystem still allows you to like engage and be involved in that journey as well with us. So that's on like the sort of Web3 side, but there's also on the Web2 side, like engaging in the content, collecting the physicals. Like I said, the online shop is coming. There's the Chimpers card app where you can, engage with different collectible card releases. And we have one upcoming actually this month with Haritos, the soda beverage brand. There'll be this really cool collectible card drop on Ape Chain on our card app with tons of rewards, tons of different cards to collect. And that's another way for you to get involved. So there's a variety of different things, like depending on what you enjoy, depending on what you value. There's many different ways to get involved.
I would recommend to everybody, if you want to start, to dive deeper into Chimpers. First of all, try to dive deeper into culture, into vision. When you understand it, everything else will be way more easier to find and understand. And you can bookmark this episode or just clip it for yourself, because you will be able to come to it anytime. And if your friends will want to like come and know how they can contribute, you can show them, okay, I have been to one-on-one podcast, I have listened to Inside, and he just like dropped this ultimate guide for everyone. So yeah, man, I mean, thank you for touching on the collector hub. I also wanted to touch on it because for me it feels like it's gonna be even more dynamic. It feels like your community don't have time to rest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're always releasing stuff. No, but I can't wait for the collector hub because that's going to be the ultimate home for Chimpers holders, for Chimpers enjoyers, enthusiasts, people who just want to get involved in the ecosystem. Like it's going to be so fun, like from news to like community spotlights, just to finding like all of the assets in our ecosystem. It's going to be really cool. Like it's going to be so much easier for people to get involved, and like it'll answer your question, like how do people stay up to date with Chimpers? Like what do they do first? Like how do they get involved? The collector hub will be the ultimate place for you to get involved and essentially learn more about everything to do with Chimpers. So yeah, it's going to be great.
It's very good to hear and know. Like years from now, when people look back at Chimpers, what do you hope the project represents for the history of Web3?
Yeah, I think Chimpers ultimately wants to be one of those defining brands that helps break out of the bubble into the mainstream and projects a really positive sentiment for the space at large. I think like I said earlier, I think it's down to all of us to get out of this rut and, start to change perceptions, start to break down those barriers. These really deep, strong walls that have, been built since 2021 with the general sort of public. So I think Chimpers, people will fall in love with characters, they'll fall in love with experiences, they fall in love with content, fall in love with products, and that's what we're focused on. And I think we're very confident that people are going to continue to fall in love with the Chimpers brand and inevitably start to, enter the Web3 world down the line. So I think for us, that's the general sort of hope and vision that Chimpers can become this defining brand that, alongside others, can really sort of bring a positive perception to the space. So yeah, no, it's exciting, and I think we're already doing a really great job. We've got so much to be proud about over the past few years, and yeah, there's just so much more to come. So it's really exciting.
100%, man. Like, break those barriers. That's my best takeaway here.
Absolutely.
And go and make it. Go and make it with the right intentions, with pure love and to your community and friendly vibe around, because we actually need it. We need more of it. We need less drama. We need more vibes like you guys provide.
Yeah,
Friendly, super organic, and at the same time super dynamic. So yeah, Inside, I really appreciate you for taking your time for this episode. It was really good. Any last words you want to share, please do. I see some people are still watching us.
yeah, no, yeah, I was just going to mention, like you said earlier with Hikaru posting the tweet, like I'm such a multitasker. So like, yeah, I was being quite cheeky, like checking Twitter whilst we're doing this, but I saw his post, and it's always nice to see that. And I think, yeah, my last words would be like, if anyone ever is like sort of curious to learn more, my DMs are always open. There's so much information to dig into, and I'm very happy to direct people where they need to go to sort of start that journey to learn more.
Man, you're doing a very good job, because even back then, back in the days, I was just, following content, and supporting Chimpers. And you DM'd me a few times. It was like a couple of years ago. Just DM'd me with like some um, like, if I have some questions, I can ask you, and you just was so friendly, and I think that's another good sign. And you should keep doing that when like you see new people around Chimpers.
Yeah.
It was like very very cute and sweet of you to write to me back then. Uh, Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, that's sort of like I like personally, like just myself, like have just yeah been quite relentless in spreading the word, spreading the vision of Chimpers, and that means connecting with people. Like we're not big enough to pretend like we can't be doing these things. We've always been on the grassroots, sort of in the trenches with the community, really just spreading the word, introducing people. And like I said, like not everybody knows about Chimpers, and a lot of people outside of our bubble are oblivious to what's going on. And sometimes a DM is, something that is, the sort of connection to really learning more. So yeah, I'm sure many people have been
Inside
introduced
is the
to the
best.
brand by me at some point in time, because yeah, when you're passionate about something and um, the sort of vision, I think it's sort of our duty as well to like the community to spread the word. And personally myself, I just love connecting with new people, and even if they don't even want to join Chimpers, I think just explaining what we're up to, just so that one extra person knows about Chimpers is like important. So
Yes.
yeah, you know, that's always been a big part of like what I have tried to do.
Insight is the best. Let me pin this comment up once again. Man, and I couldn't agree more with this take. That's for sure. Man, you're doing a very good job. Please remain yourself, always be yourself, and keep building. I think I share your passion a lot because I have the same passion for Padres. I just don't have like the same power. I'm not like a co-founder, you know, to build different things. But in your position, like, and with your passion, you already build a lot and you can do many more things. Once again, thank you so much. Wishing you all the best with your developments and growth. And yeah, it was really, really nice to chat with you. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun. Like it's yeah, been super enjoyable and glad to, you know, hopefully share the good word about Chimpers. So appreciate you. And yeah, amazing work with what you're doing as well on the streaming side. It's yeah, you know, not easy. So it's been a really great production and excited to see it, you know, start to go everywhere. So appreciate you.
We are leaving you with peace and wishing you all the best. Please have a productive week and months and much love.